When people talk about Morgan coasters, people assume you're talking about coasters like Phantom's Revenge, Steel Dragon 2000, and Steel Eel. But there are plenty of other Morgan hypercoasters out there, and one of the more overlooked ones is Steel Force. Looking at Steel Force's stats, they're quite impressive. At 200 feet tall with a 205 tall drop, it also has a track variation of 5600, which makes it quite a long ride. Just to note, every coaster I do in layout review I have ridden, so this comes with the experience of running it multiple times. Just wanted to clarify that. But anyways, let's get into the layout review. Starting off the coaster is a left-hand turn into a 200-foot tall lift. You can get a pretty good view of the park on your right, which is always nice on a hypercoaster, especially when it has a slow lift hill. Coming right off that lift is a typical Morgan hyper drop. Not too much airtime in the front, but in the back you get some floater off the drop, nothing too much. Right after that really forceful drop comes the first camelback, and in the front you only get a little bit of floater, just a little bit, while in the back, well, you get nothing. The second camelback actually gets a little more airtime, but not too much more. Note you'll only get airtime on the hill in the front, the back gets nothing due to the shaping of the hill. After that, you'll start to enter the long drawn out helix, but unlike the rest of the ride, this park coaster actually lives up to the name. It actually has some great forces in the back, and you get some head chopper moments as you pass underneath the track. After this long stretched out helix, which has good forces, you enter a almost straight track, but it's banked downwards, because Morgan doesn't know what to do when it can't make airtime hills that aren't 3/4 of the coaster's height. Steel Force at this point is a pretty lackluster ride so far, but here's the real kicker. The mid-course brake run. Not only is it right after the turnaround, but it trims pretty hard. Like, really hard. All the time. If Steel Force had any good speed on it so far, it's gone. I'm 90% sure if the trim didn't hit as hard as they currently do, the return trip would actually have airtime. But as the loud trims scream in the mid-course brake run, you realize that Steel Force will not live up to its name. Dropping off the mid-course gives no air anywhere, not in the front or the back, and for the rest of the layout this will be a very common theme. The first airtime hill off the mid-course will give you a little bit of air in the front, but basically nothing in the back. You actually expected the airtime on Steel Force? Next you'll enter a tunnel to shake things up, and to re-emerge in suddenly as you enter another lackluster hill. Seriously, this isn't funny. It's almost like Steel Force is trying to mock us, giving the illusion of airtime so close, but we'll never get it. It never delivers. Anyways, enough complaining about non-existent airtime. The next hill for some reason actually gives some weak to okayish floater airtime, but only in the front. The back gives nothing. At this point, the ride is over. You'll meander from left to right as you go over the queue, and you'll hit the final brakes and you'll ride on the extremely forceful coaster known as Steel Force. The scores. Unlike my previous video, I actually rode the coaster I'm talking about plenty of times. Front, back, and even the middle a few times. So I thought I'd make a score on this to actually rank the coaster, and I'll give it a final score, viewing the mean of all the scores. Do know that although I am scoring this off my own rides, I'm also taking account for what others have gotten off their rides, so it has a more well-rounded out of what the coaster is actually like. Anyways, let's get into the scores. Ride derivation. From the top of the lift hill to hitting the final brake run, this Morgan hypercoaster has a derivation of roughly 1 minute and 10 seconds. That's about average for about how long the track is. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Steel Force does not feel like a short ride. Airtime. Although I trash this ride for having little airtime, that doesn't mean it has no airtime. It does have a few moments of weak airtime, but not none, which is why I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Positive G's. This ride does not wimp out on positive G's at all. Every single pole of the hill gives great positive G's, and that helix has a lot of force, especially in the back. But after the mid-course, there isn't much positive left, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Could be better, but nothing to really complain about if you like positive G's and intensity. Setting. Notice how I'm not saying theming, because there is none. The only theme is the entrance sign, and even that logo is the handy-down from other Cedar Fair parks. But the coaster is in the far back of the park where Dinosaurs Alive used to be at, all the way to where Hydra is, so it goes along the extra parking lot and passes by the creek on the helix. For setting, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's not an ugly area, it's just the most you'll see is the park itself, and the area around it isn't beautiful itself. Smoothness. Steel Force is a Morgan hypercoaster. It holds up extremely well for its age, and can be helped by the fact that trains use lap bar. The ride isn't butter smooth, but it's not a rattle fest, and 8.5 out of 10 is where I put it at. In all, Steel Force is a coaster that lacks the forces it promises in its name, but it does have some redeeming qualities. Out of all the hypercoasters I have ridden, it is 100% my least favorite. Final score, 6.5 out of 10. Well, that does it for this video. If you have any suggestions to improve my videos or did something right, please tell me, as it greatly helps my channel. But other than that, Block Break Productions out.